It's been over 15 years since that night, and I still can't hike through the woods without my chest tightening. I used to love the wilderness. I was 24 back then. Hiking was practically in my blood. My parents raised me among tents, campfires, and mountain trails. We'd camp 4 or 5 times a year, no matter the season. I'd already seen some weird things out there, but never anything evil. There were 4 of us on that trip. Me, my college buddy Chris, and 2 of our friends Terry and Arthur. Chris was the real outdoorsman among us. He could find his way through any forest with just a compass and the stars. The rest of us trusted him completely, which in hindsight might have been our first mistake. We set out for Great Basin National Park on a bright Friday morning, planning a simple day hike. But we all knew ourselves too well. We packed enough to stay overnight, just in case we decided to extend the trip. 5 hours into the trail, Chris spotted something off the main path. "Check this out," he said, crouching down. "There's an old trail here, unmarked. It wasn't on our map, but it looked well used." Curiosity got the better of us, and we followed it. The trail was beautiful. Streams glittering in the sun, birds darting between pines, little waterfalls whispering from the rocks. It felt untouched, hidden from the rest of the world. Then it ended. A landslide had wiped out part of the path, leaving nothing but a steep drop and loose stones. Chris studied the terrain and said, "If we keep heading east, we'll hit the main trail again in a couple hours." We agreed, not realizing that was the last rational decision we'd make. By then, the sun was already dipping low. Shadows were stretching long through the trees, and I remember thinking how quiet it had gotten. No birds, no wind. Just the sound of our boots crunching leaves. That's when we found the first campsite. It was in ruins. A collapsed tent, supplies scattered, and a dark stain on the ground that I first thought was mud. But when Chris knelt to check, he muttered, "That's blood." I'll never forget his face, half confusion, half dread. We thought it had to be a bear attack, until Chris shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "A bear's claws wouldn't do this. These slashes are too far apart. Too deliberate." We decided to mark the location on our map and move on fast. But maybe half an hour later, we came across another site. Older, more decayed, but the same eerie destruction. Torn tents, blood, silence. Arthur's voice cracked when he whispered, "What the hell is happening out here?" None of us had an answer. We wanted to turn back, but hiking through the dark was suicide. We chose to find a clearing before nightfall and set up camp. By some cruel twist of fate, we stumbled on a small flat area near a huge boulder, with a stream running beside it. Looked safe enough until we saw the cave. At first, I thought it was just a shadow at the base of the rock, but when I looked closer, I saw the dark mouth of a cave about 6 feet across. There were boot prints all around it. Chris went in first, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. What we found inside still wakes me up at night. There was a campsite, freshly used. The smell of burnt wood hung heavy in the air. On the walls of the cave, someone had carefully arranged a collection of things: knives, animal bones, torn bits of fabric. And against one wall stood a pitchfork. A long-handled, rusted pitchfork with dried blood and one glinting on its tines. Terry whispered, "Oh my God." That's when I realized what those slashes on the tents had matched. Not claws, the prongs of that pitchfork. We bolted out of there, hearts pounding, moving fast through the trees until the light was gone, and we couldn't see 2 feet ahead. Eventually, Arthur nearly fell into a ditch, and we decided to stop. We set up camp, built a small fire, and agreed to take turns keeping watch. Arthur and I took the first shift. The forest around us was still, too still. Every flicker of the fire made the shadows twist like figures in the dark. I kept scanning the tree line, and that's when I heard it, a whistle. Soft, slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere out in the woods. Arthur's eyes met mine, wide with terror. "Chris," I hissed, shaking him awake. "Someone's out there." He grabbed his rifle instantly. We listened, nothing. Then another whistle, closer. I shouted into the darkness, "We're armed. Whoever you are, you better back off." The whistling stopped. For a few seconds, the forest was dead quiet, until we heard footsteps, circling us. Deliberate, crunching slowly through the dry leaves. Chris aimed his gun toward the sound. Terry whispered, "It's one person, right?" "Just one." But then we heard something else with laughter. A soft, breathy chuckle echoing between the trees. Then a voice low and rasping, speaking like he was talking to someone we couldn't see. "You hear them, don't you? They're back again." A pause. "Wonder if they'll scream like the last ones." Arthur's breathing quickened. "Ben, he's talking about us." We could hear him pacing just beyond the firelight. His boots scraped on the rocks, moving in slow, uneven circles. Then came the metallic clink of something being dragged along the ground. "Chris," I whispered. "That sound?" He nodded grimly. "Pitchfork." I felt my stomach turn to ice. Arthur suddenly stood up and fired into the air. The blast echoed through the trees. "One more step," he shouted. "One more step and the next shot won't be a warning." Silence. Then, from somewhere behind us, the voice whispered again, "You won't leave." For an hour, we sat frozen around that fire, every muscle locked. We didn't dare sleep. I don't remember breathing. When dawn finally broke, we grabbed our packs and ran, didn't even bother to eat. 6 hours later, we stumbled into a ranger station and told them everything. The police searched the area, but they found nothing. No torn tents, no blood, no cave. It was all wiped clean as if it had never existed. I've been a park ranger for over 12 years now, and I've seen my fair share of strange things in the wilderness. Things that make you question how much you really understand about the land you're supposed to protect. But there's one incident that still keeps me up some nights. It happened 10 years ago, in Glacier Bay National Park, Alaska. A place so remote and untamed that even by Alaskan standards. Back then, I was still fairly new to the job. Eager, idealistic, still thinking that the worst I'd face out here was a grizzly getting too close to a campsite or a lost hiker who forgot their map. I had no idea how wrong I was. It started with a couple. I still remember the day they arrived. Early morning, fog curling over the bay like breath from something ancient. They were polite, calm, maybe even cheerful. Said they were planning to camp for a month near Wolf Point, just a few miles from the shoreline. It wasn't the easiest area to get to. Rugged terrain, dense forest, unpredictable weather. But they seemed prepared. They told us they were taking the trip to reconnect. I later learned their marriage had been strained, and this was their way of starting over. Just the two of them, no phones, no noise, no world. They had taken wilderness survival classes, logged hundreds of hours camping, and had the kind of confidence you only get after facing nature and living to tell the tale. I didn't worry about them. Nobody did. 3 weeks passed before I thought about them again. That morning, I was patrolling the coast with 3 other rangers, monitoring erosion damage near Wolf Point. The air was heavy with mist, the kind that makes every sound feel distant. That's when something bright caught my eye. A green shirt, floating near the shoreline. It was a vivid color, the kind that doesn't belong in a place like this. I walked closer and froze. It had a red dragon printed on the front. I recognized it instantly. The woman had been wearing that exact shirt the day they arrived. I radioed the others. We pulled it from the water, soaked and frayed, and decided to check their campsite immediately. I wish we hadn't. The camp looked wrong the moment we stepped into it. I've seen disorganized sites before. People get tired, messy. But this was different. Their tent was half collapsed, clothes scattered in the dirt, pots overturned, utensils scattered as if thrown. Their sleeping bags were unzipped and damp from dew. It looked like they had left in a hurry, or been taken, but there were no claw marks, No torn fabric. No blood. Nothing to suggest a bear attack or violence. Just chaos. I remember the silence most. Even the birds had gone quiet, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. One of the older rangers, Tom, shook his head and said softly, "This isn't a bear." His tone made my stomach turn. We waited an hour, calling out their names, scanning the tree line, listening for any sound. Nothing. It was as if they had evaporated into the fog. We filed a report and decided to return at first light. The next morning, we hiked back at dawn. The air was colder, stiller, as if the woods were watching us. The campsite looked and exactly the same. Not a twig moved, no sign anyone had come back. That's when we called for a full search. A helicopter was dispatched. 2 K9 units were brought in. We combed the area for hours. And then, God, I'll never forget this, one of the dogs stopped dead near a ridge about 2.5 miles from camp. There, tied to a spruce tree, was a figure made of sticks, moss, and leaves. An effigy. It was shaped like a person, carefully crafted, detailed. Someone had taken their time with it, and it was dressed in women's clothing. The woman's clothing. I felt my chest tighten as I recognized a torn piece of her green shirt wrapped around the figure's arm. Someone or something had taken her clothes and built that thing. We found a second effigy not far away. This one had been burned, charred almost beyond recognition, but you could still make out the shape of a head, the outline of shoulders. It had been dressed too. The smell of smoke still lingered, faint but fresh. I remember looking around the clearing, realizing that there were no footprints, no trails, nothing. Whoever, or whatever, had done this hadn't left a single trace. When we checked the couple's inventory list, we discovered something unsettling. Every item the woman had packed was accounted for, but the man's shirt, pants, and underwear were missing. It meant that if he was still out there, he was barefoot, half-naked, and in the freezing Alaskan wilderness. We searched for days. Nothing. No tracks. No bodies. Not even a piece of fabric. 3 months later, the woman's family got closure in the cruelest possible way. The man's mother received a letter. No return address. No handwriting. Just a typed note. "I'm fine. Stop looking for us." 2 sentences, that's it. She swore it wasn't from him. He never typed letters. He always wrote by hand. And the wording. She said it sounded wrong, like someone pretending to be him. We ran forensics. Nothing. No fingerprints, no digital record. Just a ghost message from nowhere. No one ever found them. Not their bodies, not their gear. Nothing. The case remains open, but unofficially. Everyone stopped looking. Still, whenever I patrol near Wolf Point, I get this feeling. A pressure in the air, like the forest knows something it won't tell. When my kids were young, my wife and I always looked for ways to pull them away from screens and back into the world that had raised us. Back into dirt and trees. It was my wife, Karen, who suggested camping back then. Our son, Jack, was 11 then, curious, full of that boyish courage. Ellie was 9, more cautious but eager to follow her brother anywhere. We hadn't taken them camping before, not properly. It felt overdue. After a bit of planning, we settled on Olympic National Forest. I'd been there before, years ago, before marriage and kids, back when my friends and I thought we were explorers. It was wild but manageable, dense with pines and ferns and stretched out beneath the shadow of the Olympic Mountains. We packed everything: tent, lanterns, food, a small grill, and more marshmallows than the kids could eat in a week. The drive took nearly 4 hours from Tacoma. Later, we found a spot down an old Forest Service road right beside a narrow creek. There was no one else around, no other camps. The kids immediately started exploring the bank, poking at the water with sticks and laughing when minnows darted away. By sunset, we'd grilled burgers and eaten around a fire that crackled and hissed like it was alive. Ellie made up a ghost story about a monster that could mimic human voices. Jack rolled his eyes, pretending not to be scared. When they finally got tired, Karen tucked them into the tent while I stayed up a while longer, poking at the fire and staring at the dark wall of trees that surrounded us. That's when it started. I thought I'd imagined a sound somewhere deep in the forest, but later it came again. A scream. It was far off, a sharp, terrified human sound through the stillness, and then vanished. Karen came out of the tent, her flashlight trembling in her hand. "Did you hear that?" I nodded. "Yeah. Sounded like someone." The scream came again, this time clearer, closer. It wasn't a single shout. It was a long, panicked wail that rose and broke off suddenly. Karen's face went pale. "That's a person." My gut twisted. "Yeah, it is." We looked at each other, both waiting for the other to say something that made sense of it. There was no reason anyone else should have been out here. We hadn't passed a single campsite or parked car for miles. "What if someone's hurt?" Karen asked. I hesitated, glancing toward the black forest beyond the firelight. "I'll check it out," I finally said, grabbing the flashlight and my pocket knife. "Stay here. Keep the kids in the tent. Don't leave the camp no matter what." Karen bit her lip but nodded. I could see she hated the idea of me going alone. The trail behind our site led deeper into the forest, toward the sound. The air was cooler there, thick with the scent of pine and wet moss. My flashlight beam cut a narrow tunnel through the darkness, and every step seemed to echo louder than it should have. Then it came again, that scream, closer now, sharper, like it was just up ahead. "Hello?" I called out. "Are you okay? Hello?" No answer. Just the same cry again from somewhere else. It was strange. Each time it came, it seemed to move. Sometimes it was ahead, then off to my right, then behind me. Always distant, always just far enough that I couldn't see who or what it was. "Hey, I'm here to help," I yelled again. Silence. The forest was too quiet now. No wind, no bugs. Just my breathing and the crunch of my boots. A cold thought crept in. What if someone was messing with me? I stopped, trying to listen. My eyes strained to catch any movement, any sign of another person. But all I saw were the endless ranks of trees stretching in every direction. Then the screaming stopped. Just gone. Cut off mid-cry, I realized then how far I'd gone. The glow from our campfire was gone, the trail barely visible behind me. My chest tightened. "Okay," I muttered to myself. "Turn around. Go back." I retraced my steps as carefully as I could. Then finally, through the trees, I saw the orange glow of the fire. I stepped into the clearing, but something was wrong. The fire was almost out, glowing dull red. The tent was slashed open from top to bottom. "Karen?" I shouted, running forward. "Ellie? Jack?" No answer. The sleeping bags were empty, tossed aside. It looked like someone had ripped the tent apart with a knife. My stomach dropped. I spun toward the road, ready to run. Then I saw headlights in the distance, bouncing along the dirt path. My truck. I sprinted toward it. When it stopped, Karen was behind the wheel, pale and shaking. Jack and Ellie sat in the back, wide-eyed and silent. I yanked the door open. What the hell happened? Karen didn't even wait. She hit the gas and tore away from the campsite. "Two men," she said finally, gripping the steering wheel so tight. "They came out of the woods right after you left." My heart pounded. "What? What men?" She shook her head. "I don't know. They didn't say anything. They just stood there, a few yards away, staring at the tent. They looked dirty, like hunters. I didn't want to wait to find out. I grabbed the kids, jumped in the truck, and left." "Did they follow you?" I asked, twisting in my seat to look behind us. "No," she said. "They just stood there, watching." The image made my skin crawl. Two silent men standing by our camp, watching as my family fled into the night. "What about the tent?" I asked. "I didn't look back," Karen whispered. "Why?" I swallowed. "It was shredded when I got there, like someone cut it apart." No one spoke for a while after that. At dawn, we went to the local sheriff's office and filed a report. The deputy listened quietly as I explained everything. He nodded along, jotting notes. When I finished, he sighed and said, "You'd be surprised how often we hear about weird stuff like this. Could have been squatters, could have been someone trying to scare you off their hunting ground." He and another officer went out later that morning to check the site. When they came back, they told us what they found: torn fabric, footprints leading into the woods, and drag marks that stopped about 30 yards from the trail, but no sign of anyone. The deputy looked uneasy as he handed me back my report. "You did the right thing." For weeks after, I had nightmares. I'd wake up in a sweat. In the dream, I'd find the source of a woman standing deep in the forest, face turned away, mouth open. We haven't been camping since. When the kids ask why, I tell them the truth, that it was too dangerous, that there are people out there who live by their own rules.